Mullen should be here.
Okay, we've
Sure, make note of the exact time of his arrival because he knows.
yeah. We'll get that very tight. You guys are for the record. This welcome everyone
Recording
to the
in
Wednesday,
progress.
August 19th, 2026 Trinidad Planning Commission meeting. Let's start with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Slade.
Present.
Commissioner Cole.
Here.
Commissioner R. Johnson.
Here.
S. Johnson is absent at this time, and Commissioner Hickman is.
Okay, moving on, we'll go to the approval of the July minutes. We all have here. Are there any comments, changes on this? Here.
So we cannot approve the minutes, as I understand it. Because we do not have a
yes. Yeah, you're right, because you weren't here.
extension. However, I'll make one comment, and that is, there are a number of things that we kind of agreed to in the session that are to be reflected in tonight's information. Now, basically, most of them are on page 6 of the packet and 7 of the packet. And I bring that up only because we agreed to certain things. For example, regarding the limits on size, that the consensus was 850 square feet max for a studio 1-bedroom. So I just want to make sure that those things that we agreed, doesn't mean that they're, in concrete, but that they're reflected in what we're going to be talking about tonight. And we may change our mind, but I mean, those were some of the assumptions and consensus that we made last.
That's good to highlight with the 3 people that we had last month here. Yeah. All right. Well, we shelve these for now. Is that all right?
Yeah, I think we have to. Yeah.
Unless you have any. I mean, if you got any edits, I guess take those. But... All right, moving on to approval of tonight's agenda. Anyone want to make any changes there?
Move to approve the agenda.
I second. Richard seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, passes. And item from the floor. There's nobody from the public. Anyone else? Commissioners have anything from the floor they want to add? Then we'll just move on to the agenda items, which is start with it. Number 1, zoning ordinance. Continuing from last month.
Yeah, so We just sort of started last month with a general discussion. We did go through the questions regarding the ADUs that I had, but in terms of the CDPs, we did not start going through the regulations themselves. There are just some general comments and questions, which I've noted, but I did not provide any revised document. There was some concern about making decisions about the ADU questions with only 3 commissioners. Now we have a fourth. So we might want to discuss those again, as mentioned in the minutes. But there was consensus on most of those questions. The only thing new I have are some maps. There was also the flow chart, so the permitting flow chart for ADUs. This is, it's not complete. I still have some outstanding questions for the Coastal Commission in terms of permitting for OWTS improvements and how that's going to fit into the process. But for now, this is sort of how the permitting is set up. There is this exclusion area. So Appendix B, there was a question about reference to Appendix B. This is the map from the city approval of the city's exclusion order. We talked a little bit about the differences between exemptions and exclusions. And so essentially the exclusion doesn't apply to the parcels adjacent to the shoreline. This map also shows the appealable area as it was approved in 85 and originally in 1980. It's slightly different now. So those are the next maps. So there's, I know this ADU limited area is much on this map, but it's just kind of showing you what the limited area is based on as the intent. The open space areas, I wasn't sure exactly how, again, just sort of pointing those out that they're not areas where you would have ADUs, but they're not part of the limited area because they're open space. So just one that could be confusing to people. So that's on there. It also shows the bluff edge, the LID infiltration area, and soil stability. So those are those lines. And then a little bit more simplified, the last map is the coastal jurisdictions, with one caveat that I was hoping to get concurrence that Underwood would be the first public road, because it essentially goes through the state park except for a gate there, and it makes sense. I mean, you're not, projects on the school grounds shouldn't be appealable to the it's not public access issues. Seems like it shouldn't be appealable, but heard from Coastal Commission staff and they said no, because it doesn't actually go through. It's not the first public road. So Trinity is the first public road. And so that orange area is going to come in. But it shows the bluff edges. And
questions from Trevor on her report? Go ahead.
On the limited ADU area, figure 1, the area called no infiltration LID zone, that's low impact development.
Yeah.
Is that important for this?
Yes. So, and it's very difficult to see it on this map, but yeah, that's part of the basis for how we outlined that limited ADU area. Is part of that line is where GHG determined that infiltration isn't gonna impact livability.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's a little unclear is,
It's, yeah, oh, and the the view protection zone is on there too. It's, yeah, no, this map is not clear. And I don't intend this to be a finished map, but it's just kind of showing you all the factors that went into mapping that ADU area.
I think I,
But if you have, but I think we are gonna need, we're gonna need something like this for coastal commission and HCD in terms of justifying how that area is mapped. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are difficult to see on here, and certainly we can work on that if you have a comment.
I guess the view and the views and vegetation zone. We're using that as another restrictor on ADUs. That's why that's on there.
Yeah.
Okay. On map anyways, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they align up pretty closely. The ADU limited area and the views and vegetation zone line up pretty closely.
Other questions on the maps, the newly provided maps?
I was personally surprised to learn, maybe this is my own naivete, that Trinity was first public road. For that matter, I was surprised to learn that Underwood was also the first public road. Have we had discussions in the past about Edwards being the first public road, or is that?
Well, Edwards is, let's see.
Or I guess there's a stretch of Edwards road.
Yeah, there's a stretch of it. So there's the Coastal Act or Coastal Commission definition of the first public road is it's open to the public and it is a through road, where Underwood is a dead end.
So the segment of Edwards where it provides sort of a route, an open route. I erroneously made the assumption that the entire length of Edwards was the first public road in further discussions, but that's just me.
I mean, and and I think that things between Edwards and Underwood, that is, I mean, it's not a coastal access issue, but there's definitely view and scenic issues there. Of Underwood seems a little.
I guess I had well, thanks for putting together the flow chart. It was encouraging to see the flow chart and how I thought it worked is how it is laid out on the flow chart. That your note about OWTS systems, which you referenced earlier. So that would just be like, if you were going to ministerially approve a ADU, you would also want to ministerially approve an OWTS expansion or new system.
Yeah, I mean, OWTS has been one of the most problematic pieces of this streamlining permitting of ADUs because the coastal commission doesn't allow, you know, exceptions or exemptions for septic systems. Although I question, I wonder, you know, could depend on who you talk to at the coastal commission, potentially, because the language seems to repairs and maintenance, I think, could be. They've been really, and we've butted heads on that for years. You can do administrative CDPs for OWTS, but that's only outside the appealable area, which isn't, you know, that's not a significant portion of the city. But the latest I've heard from the housing, their statewide housing coordinator, I forget his exact position, he thinks that OWTS improvements are really part of the ADUs under the ADU law and should fall under those ministerial permits. So hopefully it's not a separate process. That's what I'm hoping to hear next week.
Which brings up the question, if you look at your staff report and under the background and the first page of the staff report, the second paragraph, I didn't understand this one sentence, and it's right in the middle of the second paragraph. Recently, their statewide housing coordinator opined that any improvements related to establishing an ADU were subject to the same streamlined permitting procedures as ADUs, which could include OWTS. And I think that's kind of what you were just saying.
That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah.
So, but what I don't understand is there a distinction between establishing the ADU or improvements to an ADU? And I look at those as two different things. Am I overthinking that?
So, well, I think what he was saying is any work that's required to create an ADU, which could be driveway improvements, it could be septic improvements, it could be, you know, remodeling on the house, whatever construction it is, all of that is wrapped into these streamlined procedures. So these would not be, so we're not talking about existing ADUs that then someone is expanding. I haven't even actually asked that question. But this is creating a new ADU. Could be out of an existing structure, it could be new construction.
Okay, so having said that, then if I interpret what you just said, that with this sentence here, that means then that you include the OWTS improvements in that.
The ministerial, yes, the ministerial permit.
Oh, okay. In the allowable ADU area only.
Well, no, so the difference between the limited ADU area and the outside the limited ADU area, you can get, well, through so many iterations, but I think as currently written, you can get a ministerial permit in the limited ADU area. It's just a smaller ADU.
Right, that's yes, I get that.
But the OWTS improvements would be in either.
Right, but if you're outside the limited area,
Then you go.
the OWTS it as part of that CDP, or is it oh, I see. So it's all one. It will always be all one.
It would always be part of the ADU material from.
Okay, I think I understand. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on the maps or the flow chart or otherwise, or you guys want to get back into the ordinance?
There is no decision we have to make on first agenda item.
I don't know. No, there's not. That as far as I'm understanding, it's just we're having another opportunity to give some feedback after another one, thinking and reading.
If Chris has any input on those ADU questions.
Specific. Yeah. Brad, Chris was not here last.
Right. I had strong feelings at one point of those. Maybe I didn't have strong feelings, and that's why I urged us to seek. But from, I also recall not being thrilled with the council's decisions. So I don't know, I have to revisit those. I come through the minutes and I sort of appreciate both perspectives. I think that we as a commission, the first time we drafted or looked at and really drafted this, were largely supportive of permitting use in STRs in ADUs. Yes. Correct. I don't know.
I think we go back and forth on it. Right. Where
I mean, the point that's most compelling to me is Tristan's honestly, which is that occasionally that actually makes the affordability better for the main residents. But of course, now you've got an improvement, which probably actually increases the entire value of parcel and improvements, which might also make the whole thing less affordable. So yeah, I have strong feelings. Regrettably, sorry.
yeah.
Well, it was a mixed decision, or I wouldn't even say it's a decision, mixed conversation from the last meeting.
Certainly.
And I don't think whether we're going to make another decision tonight or
I
not.
don't think we are.
I think it's maybe the big remaining open question.
That's the one that, for whatever reason, over the past month, I think about the most, carrying things over from our discussion last month. But I don't know that it's worth rehashing that conversation right now for different people. It'd be great to have all 5 people here and have that discussion.
Well, it'd be great to have members of the public weigh in.
It would be also really, that was one of the things I had thought is like, that is something that really public should weigh in on, because it maybe affects them more than it's just some sort of a policy.
It's easy to imagine blowback from either decision, right? And so sort of anticipating some blowback. Because we wish that there was more public input on that particular topic. I'm not solicited it. It's been a long-standing problem.
That's a long-standing problem.
Would we want to ask the city council to have this as an item and for public discussion? Because we're not getting any here.
Right.
Well, we'll eventually. I don't know that it's worthwhile having it before you make a recommendation on the ordinance. I think that part of your recommendation could be to highlight that in the ordinance and ask that the city council specifically discuss it at a public. Would be my suggestion, as opposed to sending it to them and then having it come back to you.
So you don't think there's any ripple effect through the rest of the documentation? Had that decision?
No, I think because the state law restricts ADUs from being STRs in most circumstances anyway. So there's only a limited narrow portion of STR or ADUs that the state even allows you to allow to be. So I think it'd just be, it'd be in the standards, so JADUs cannot be STRs under the state law, and then the state, what do we call those? The state exempted, ADUs, those cannot be STRs either. But then regular ADUs. The city can allow them to be STRs, and so I would probably include the restriction in those standards as ADUs can't be STRs, but I would highlight it and ask the city council to specifically discuss that. I mean, I think the simplest thing would be to say no STRs and ADUs, then we don't have to figure out when the state allows them to be STR.
I
mean, we shouldn't necessarily make decisions based on that.
Yeah. I mean, what I will say, recalling now some of the discussions that have happened over the last 16, 18 months or it's been, I do think that that we should operate independently of the STR ordinance. I don't think we should be able to rely on STR ordinance, which can evolve over time, right? Particular regard. So I think that, yeah, I would justify exclusion of restrictions because the STR ordinance provides those exclusions.
Yeah.
Right.
Is it? Well, never mind. Okay. Sounds like we're closing in on that conclusion. No STRs and ADUs. Any other topics we want to out of here we want to dive into?
Are we, are we going to go through the CDP regulations?
Do you want to go through page by page, I guess?
I don't know. I mean, consensus.
We can do that. Sure, let's do that. I guess I'd sort of hope to have a better. Oh, here we go.
Sorry, no guess.
Roland's here now at 6:30 on the dot.
Let the minutes reflect that.
Let's reflect.
I'll just point out that there's a member of the public here now, so maybe we want to collect some public comment.
Sure. Let's have a little public comment while Roland gets settled. Sherry, do you have anything? We're discussing the CDP general regulations here. Do you have any public comment? We're thirsty for public comments here.
Thank you. Good evening. I do not have any comments right now, but I do have an STR. And so that's why I'm interested in the evening discussion tonight. But I was just thinking while you were all talking, it would be simple to keep them separate. But on the other hand, I was thinking, well, my mom's almost 90 years old. And she might need to be a little closer to me as she becomes hard to get around and I might want to use my STR for her to stay there for a while so I can keep an eye on her. So I don't know if I would lose then my STR permit because it's an AUD, or can I take a break from my STR permit for a year so that she can stay there? I don't know. I was just thinking personally, those were some thoughts that came in my mind. But to keep it simple, definitely keeping them separate would be easier for the community to understand. So those are my comments and thoughts just at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess I maybe I missed that. Is your STR also, is it on the same parcel as your main house or it's a separate house?
Two units on parcel.
2 units, 1 parcel. Okay, thanks. Whoever knows.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
I think just to answer that, that would really be governed more by the STR ordinance. There's a minimum annual rental of 60 nights a year. Now, whether the city, I'm not sure there's a provision where that could be waived for a year. But if you rented, 60 days earlier in the year, then put your mom in there, you could have her in there for 18 months and then rent 60 days at the end of the next year. And that would be fine. If that makes sense.
That brings up a good question. And we should probably look at that in the STR ordinance to see if does it make sense to have some sort of temporary hold on an STR for Lord knows whatever, could be the issue. Yeah, that's a good point. We haven't addressed that before.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Good point. I mean, I think the concern from the city is the tax revenue, of course. I mean, I think that's why there's the minimum.
Well, but I could also see where,
but obviously it has to be more personal.
Sure, but I could also see where, since we've got a lottery system, and if someone was willing, that they wanted to say set their STR up for that period of the waiver, I mean, you're not losing anything other than it's complicated.
Yeah, right. Right.
Good point.
Yeah, you could take a 2-year stint or something like that. Certainly worth considering. Well, back to us. Roland, since you're here, now that you're here, I should say, we spent the first part of this agenda item going over the new maps provided by Trevor. I want to give you a chance to ask any questions or chart.
Well, the only question I have on any of these maps is the strange breaks in the bluff edge. Shown on these maps. And understand the ones where it was going to create that makes sense that you have a non-bluff edge on a stream channel, but one's up and then the one right in the front, Virginia Beach, it's like, what?
Well, I know the one below Wagner there is another terrace down there at the bottom, so that's what that is. And so then that makes that the coastal bluff edge as opposed to the next terrace up, where along further west, that lower terrace doesn't exist. So the upper edge is the bluff edge. So like the terrace where the the Sebring residences, Kelly Sebring. Old Iverson.
You should still be able to connect the lines even though you don't have really a bluff feature. I mean, because we're talking about the bluff edge, not because it's an edge, but because that's a boundary that requires setbacks and a lot of other things, and that's the best thing we've got for that determination. So for the person on the lot up above saying, well, I'm right there at the edge, and the next one down says, well, I've got all the way down to the beach, you know. Well, I'm good everywhere in there, which we know isn't true. It's the bluff. It's, you know. So either you need an explanation for that or see if you can find a way to accommodate that. The one over at Mill Creek is, I don't know, it doesn't just matter because there's not going to be any development ever over there. With all the issues around the property, just as Indian Beach, it just seems like that strange thing and it doesn't make sense. Most people, there's no reason you can't connect those up. And mine, I'm not the author, so obviously it won't check. It's like, well, Gary, can you connect the dots? Draw a line through there or something, or explain, I don't know.
Well, it's, so your concern on the one in front of Wagner's or below Wagner Street. I think the bluff edge does continue, but maybe this is just mapping the first bluff edge
Actually, in the first bluff edge, yeah.
rather than, and so
And maybe that's not clear. It's the coastal, it's the part of it's the bluff edge subject to wave action.
But you're mixing different uses. I mean, the issue of people at the top of the bluff, behind the bluff edge, is got a whole different thing than the wave action on the beach.
Well, but that's how Coastal Act defines a coastal bluff, and maybe I should, we can qualify that as the coastal bluff edge, which is why it doesn't continue, above, west of Galindo there's definitely a bluff above the parking lot, harbor parking area, but it's not, the toe is not subject to wave action, so it's not a coastal. I think that is the differentiator.
Well, I guess if that's the definition is out there someplace, never seen it defined that way. I mean, it's not actually a geologic term.
No, it's a coastal commission definition.
special definition.
It's like, learn something new that you take a term like that and get away that doesn't have a normal definition. Yeah. But otherwise, I think these maps are really nice. They really do a good job of defining the issues for most people. Maybe minus that one issue. But thank you for the opportunity to comment.
All right, so we were just about to go through the CDP regulations. There's 24 pages here, so we didn't go through it page by page last time, so I think it probably would be smart to go through it. So all right, so here, let's start with the first page. Packet page 41. Questions or comments there? I guess that's packet page 41 from July's packet. Sorry. I'm moving on to 42 then. 43.
Sorry, just one thing on page 42. Is zoning administrator defined elsewhere?
It is, do we? It's somewhere. I can't remember if it's actually, if we've actually added it and it's certified, but it's in some amendment somewhere that maybe with the ADU ordinance or something. Yes. And I mean, because currently there's actually actually in the current ordinance, the old ordinance, I think there's something like a zoning administrator. I don't know if that's the term, but there is.
Okay, as long as it's defined somewhere, my concern is that it's not just evergreen, but always the person we intend to be responsible for that. So as long as those criteria are there.
All right, moving on then. 324.
Yeah, I mean, I had a comment on the last bullet there, or item 1 starts improvements to a single family residence. And it says that in a significant public view shed or highly scenic area, those areas designated in the certified LUP or determined during project review. I understand the first part, meaning that there are areas in the LUP, but then we add in determined during project review, and that seems a little loose to me. I don't quite understand how we do that, and what is the criteria for doing that?
That has not been determined. So that language is not in the coastal act exemption. So that's something that's in Santa Cruz County's ordinance. I left it in there for consideration. So I'm not sure that the coastal commission would allow this language at this point.
Yeah, I see your comment.
Yeah.
And I get that, and maybe it shouldn't be in here because that's a little vague, I think, to try to determine during project review what is a public view shed or highly scenic area. That's pretty arbitrary.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to have criteria and design review, kind of similar, like we would be adding to the design guidelines that are from the views and vegetation ordinance, so criteria for determining what's a significant shed. So yeah, you would have to have criteria associated.
Well, is there going to be sometime a document or a map that defines where some significant public view shed is, or highly scenic? Because I mean, if the entire, I guess, the view area of Trinidad is defined, this is significant, and this is not. This is highly scenic, and this is just regularly scenic. If you end up with a document like that, then you're fine. But I was thinking that this would be there because a specific project then would have a chance to define, is this fit? And you would have a chance to get public input on that. A decision board like us are appealable to the city council would then determine whether yes, that was.
I think it could be determined in a variety of ways. I think we could have a map that, I mean, we do have a view protection overlay zone. That's a little bit different. But so I think we could define certain areas of the city as more scenic than others. I think you could also You could also have some criteria or standards and refer to as designated by and have those criteria and refer to those criteria, some of which are in these design.
But then it'd still be up to judgment.
It would still be up to judgment, but at least you'd have the reference to the criteria, which I think or is determined during project review based on, and you could refer to the criteria.
Which,
So I mean, I think you could do it in a variety of ways.
well, if you had good data being generated in the future, then you wouldn't need a term like this. But otherwise, it does seem like either you come up with criteria like that, or you just leave it like it is and say, during review, we're gonna get a lot of input on whether this is a significant public view shed or not. You can anticipate these view things being disputed probably as much as anything that ever happened.
Yeah, and I think at this, and this would be a staff level determination. It would have to be a staff level determination because you're deciding if something's exempt.
Well, if you break it down though, this says that significant public viewshed and highly scenic areas, those designated in the certified LUP. So is our view overlay in the certified LUP?
Yeah.
Okay, so okay. But
I mean, when I read that, it suggests the view overlay zone, like what you're saying, but yeah, it's not. Like, that makes sense.
yeah, no, I
That's what I think. Oh, it must be that, but except it's not.
So those, the overlay zone take care of this?
Yeah, because it's not certified. I mean, I think you could. I mean, I think the language about certified LUP is in the Coastal Act regulation. So I think you could have that in there, even if you don't have a map, and then plan to designate one. And if you don't have a map, then you don't have a highly scenic area. But once you adopt a map, then you do. So you can have that language in there even without a map.
And adopt it later.
And adopt it later.
So,
So as determined during project review, that's maybe something that. Yeah, because it would have to be a staff determination, so I think it should be based on.
Just to clarify, there is currently no designated highly scenic area in any certified document.
That's correct. And then I do have a question, a note for the planning commission for the other one. So in general, the Coastal Act exempts any improvements to existing single-family residences, unless they're between the sea and the first public road, or next to a bluff, or by this environmentally sensitive habitat area. But in general, like say up on Berry Road, any improvement to an existing single-family residence would be exempt from a C. Does the planning commission want to limit that? One reason to maybe do that is to try and keep the projects that require design review and CDPs aligned. But there really isn't anything wrong with a project that requires design review, but not a CDP. That's fine too. But right now the projects are aligned. Maybe there's some efficiency or ease of just keeping them aligned. But that was one of my questions for the planning commission. If you want to limit the size of those improvements that are exempt.
Where is that referenced here?
That's the previous comment. So paragraph A, the highlighted.
The 500.
Oh, I see. Okay.
There's an addition of so something that meets that less than 500 square foot threshold would still have to go through design review. Is that right?
As current, well, so currently the design review projects that are exempt from a CDP don't require design review, but it specifically refers to the section that are the exclusions in the current ordinance. We don't have the exemptions in the current ordinance, so anything that is smaller than what are in the exclusions are exempt from CDP and design review current. So you could continue to do that. You could say projects that are exempt or excluded from a CDP don't require design review. Or you could separate the two. Require more projects to have design review. Or you could limit the CDP exemptions potentially. Here's what?
Yeah. To further clarify things, I think, like I personally would be okay with or significant exemptions or all the negative thing from the previous discussion. Fewer restrictions on these types of developments based on zoning, right? Like back to your very road. Like that's the SR zone. That's I sort of feel like that's could be treated differently than the water zone.
You could. So there have been discussions about having, not having design review east of the freeway. For example. The current general plan does sort of refer to that. I forget the exact language, but the design guidelines that I gave you for the next topic that are from the general plan, it says these are recommended for use west of the highway, actually.
Even just looking at the various maps, right? Like the salmon colored areas differ tremendously, I think, in their community character, right? It's been worthwhile considering or to consider those differences in character when determining what should or shouldn't be.
I guess just off the top of my head, I kind of favor the idea of having a CDP. Sorry, design review. Only because it kind of acts as a point where everyone has an opportunity to see what the design looks like. And I'm not picking on anybody, but I was very surprised after we approved the warehouse on Quarry, how big that was and how out of scale it was for the rest of the area. And again, I mean, we approved it. I mean, it was.
Did that go through design review?
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
Okay,
I mean,
sorry.
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't remember that.
The barn?
The barn, whatever it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just think it's incumbent on us to have at least a review of items that, we might want to say, oh, wait a minute. Maybe we don't want 90-foot spire. kind of on the top or something. I just think it makes sense.
So you're basically saying anything in city limits needs a design review.
Well, no, because there are specific things, for example, ministerial approval of ADUs, for example, that would not get design review.
You're talking about structure. Most ADUs are not.
Well,
structure.
Okay. They could be.
I guess that could be good.
Yeah. And in some areas of the city, in the, I forget what do you call it, the approved ADU area, yeah, some of those could be ministerial, right? So, yeah.
They can be new structures.
Of course, we didn't really have any choice with the ADUs. State said you go do this.
Yeah.
So now we have a chance to add to that. This, I guess. Right now, it's if you're east of the highway, is that what you're saying? There's these are exempt.
Or ADUs or?
No, not talking about ADUs, but what?
I'm just saying that has been discussed in the past. I think previously the planning commission opted to keep design review the same, that really there's community, it's a different community character, but it's still part of the community and there's still a character, and so it should have design review. So I think the last time the planning commission discussed this issue, they decided to keep design review everywhere. I'm just saying that it is something that comes up, and can.
Yeah.
If we just left things alone, what people are accustomed to and what's been the normal process, if we just left that like it is, then you're not going to stir anything up.
No, I think the only reason we're really talking about it now is that right now, design review and CDPs are aligned. And so when we adopt these exemptions, which are in the Coastal Act, so we kind of have to, and if we want to keep the same design review process, they're going to separate. So there will be projects that don't require CDP, but do require design review, and that's fine.
When in that situation, say we did do that, but a project has to go through design review, is there still noticing for that, or they just have a hearing and?
Yeah, so I mean, in some ways, for me, it might be simpler to keep the two aligned. But I think for design review, you could just refer to the noticing requirements for CDP. So most ordinances are the opposite, actually, because majority of most jurisdictions is not in the coastal zone. And so they have already provisions for public hearings and noticing and all those things. And so then the CDP regulation just refers to those, as long as that's consistent with the coastal act. In our case, I think we'll probably use the CDPs as the drivers and just refer to those requirements.
Yeah, I'm in favor with keeping it together. That sounds more straightforward.
I would tend to agree. But then to separate things, people are gonna look for the gaps in between.
So not requiring design review if it's exempt from a CDP, or just keeping the procedures alive?
The things are mutually.
We don't have to decide that tonight, I think, but we will. When we will need to, at some point, I'm gonna have to go through the whole zoning ordinance and find anything, that references our current CDP regulations and I'm gonna have to change the references. And so that's when we'll have to sort of discuss, well, are we gonna refer design review, anything that's exempt to CDP, or is it gonna be for projects that require design?
Maybe if we had a couple of examples, that would maybe at least help me crystallize in my head of whether we want to just have a design review if it's a CDP exempt. Try to think myself, I can't do that.
That's a good suggestion to do. You've got examples from the past. I don't have, so.
Yeah, we could look at some past projects and say, okay, well, this went through design review, it would have been exempt from CDP.
Yeah, that would kind of help me.
Yeah, pretty good. Okay, we'll continue that discussion. Anything else on that page, 3 of 24? Moving on to the next page then, 4 of 24.
I guess in terms of those, where I highlight that they're not in the coastal act regulations, are those things that the planning commission is even interested in including, or should I just take them out and stick with the coastal act language? Coastal act regulation language. So fire suppression improvements, and then this guest house.
Why vote for them? You know, especially the first one with respect to any additional use of water, I think is critical.
And later I did include that as something that requires a CDP, is something that uses a lot.
What's the status quo at the moment? Like if somebody wanted to put in a swimming pool?
It's a good question. I've never been asked about a swimming pool in Trinidad. There actually is mention of swimming pools somewhere in the zoning ordinance as like an accessory structure. So,
I guess the question is, does inclusion of these things substantially change any aspect of the current permitting process?
so, I mean, this is where our ordinance gets difficult to use, is that over the years, we've kind of moved towards where Trinidad's ordinance is silent for things that are in the Coastal Act or conflicts with things that are in the Coastal Act. We go with the stricter of the two regulations. It's like the exemptions are not in its current ordinance. I don't think, I mean, I guess a pool would be an accessory structure, could be an accessory structure, but then you look at where it is, if it's in like an unstable area, it's supposed to bluff, and how much grading. So would a grading permit be required? Although that's something where Trinidad's in a lot of jurisdictions, grading permits are ministerial, like building permits. certain grading requires a CDP though, so I guess that's why it's part of Trinidad's LCP.
Why is a swimming pool gonna be a grading issue? You're digging a hole and carrying off a bunch of dirt.
Well, because if a grading permit's required, if you're disturbing 1,000 square feet or 50 cubic yards, so you'd look at whether it hits those pressure.
If it's big enough to hit those criteria, but I don't know why otherwise a swimming pool needs to be set aside. I mean, even this thing about substantially increasing potable water, it's like you fill a swimming pool once and then you supplement. It's not, the irrigation system is a whole different thing. It's, use of water all time. Periodically during the dry season when it counts. I mean, I don't know. You could maybe say the first time they have to fill a swimming pool, they have to do it with a imported water or something. But after that, why is it any different than other personal property use? I don't like the idea of a swimming pool in Trinidad, but if somebody wants to do it, why would we throw a roadblock in front of it?
Well, it's not just swimming pools. I mean, I admit that, yeah, I don't think there's any swimming pools, but there's some pretty big koi ponds. And they, well, I mean, and they use a lot of water.
Yeah, they do.
And filtering, maintenance on a koi pond, based on my limited experience, can be pretty nasty when it comes to water use. So,
Well, wait a minute, how many times does somebody clean out a koi pond in an average year?
oh,
A properly maintained koi pond requires a lot of flushing.
yeah.
Yeah, because generally they're circulating water, right? And you have irrigation loss.
Well, yeah, I picked on koi ponds, but what I guess I'm trying to say.
Well, no, there's similar things. I mean, yeah, you can come up with other examples. I'm just saying is,
I mean, the coastal commission, I was always bringing up hot tubs in terms of STRs, because I think they might drain them in between. They drain those hot tubs and clean them a lot
Right.
when they're STRs.
Too.
I struggle a bit with the water use issues because, like we've said in the past, like Trinidad's got abundant water until it doesn't. I don't know that that's
this is a great state. It's got nothing to do with the water source. In that case, it has to do with the leaky system.
yeah, the leaky system is Trinidad's biggest water customer, isn't it?
Yeah. Still is. I think.
So I always feel a bit funny like restricting water use when it's periodically abundant. I guess substantially increases potable water use during the dry season or during periods of low flow, or there's other language elsewhere about like willows and stuff, right? That also do water use and water use restrictions, right? That's another aspect.
I mean, we have a water shortage contingency plan. And so, and Humboldt, I mean, I think you've probably seen the notice, the creek is fairly low now. So I think that's stage one. So I think the city might be looking at putting together its water advisory committee under that again. But also a couple of years ago, we looked at water use and water use over time and, how we wanted to monitor or regulate water use. Or is that a permitting issue? Because under the Coastal Act definition of development, change in the intensity of use of water is development. And I do think it might be good we talked about kind of doing an annual sort of water report and looking at water use and how it changes every year, and maybe even doing we looked at doing sort of an automated little postcard to send to everybody that shows, here's your water use last year, here's your water use this year, here's the average water use, just as so I've been talking with Gabe a little bit about putting that together again for this fall, because it's normally in September that we can look at that. So But that's more of a water conservation.
Yeah, when we were talking about this, if Trinidad had done what they should have done years ago and improved the system and all of that. I mean, this is because Trinidad is their own little unique water problems.
Yeah.
Otherwise, would we be so concerned about water use?
No, I think I
Pay
think,
for that.
but I do think there's two sides of the water use issue. There's the supply, but there's also the where's it going to?
Well, if they're putting it into their septic systems, yeah, I mean, if you're running it out on the ground and then paying for it when they replace it. I think we have to be careful about being too restricted about things.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. That's why I made the comment is that excessive water use isn't that irresponsible for most of the year, except for I guess when it impacts soil stability or what have you. But I guess on the other hand, this doesn't forbid a swimming pool, for example, right? It just requires that it's reviewed by somebody. So.
Well, reviewed and then approved, right? I mean, if we're gonna review, you don't just review to review, you review to decide you're gonna support or not.
I am not necessarily advocating for these things. I just, when I was copying them from where I copied them from, I thought there were some things that they could apply to Trinidad, and I thought were good for discussion.
Well, again, going back to the format, I mean, this is an exception to the exemption. So it's not like we're putting any further regulation on it. We're just saying that you have to look at this.
Yep.
Right.
Which seems
And I guess I'm saying I don't see any reason why not to leave it in there.
I support that.
And coming around on the idea as well, I guess at this point, my only question is how you define substantially increase potable water use.
Well, capricious and arbitrary. I mean, it's a hard problem.
Judgment call, yeah. I expect continuity.
And if somebody, if this is determining whether something's ministerial or not, there ought to be some benchmark.
I wouldn't really know where to begin. In that same note or same paragraph, the comment about fire suppression. I guess to me that doesn't necessarily. I would remove fire suppression, I guess, from it. I don't know why that would need to go. Yeah, to me, I'm just imagining someone putting a sprinkler system on their roof to use and or like installing sprinklers inside their home after the fact. I'm not, doesn't seem like it would actually increase any use of water except for an emergency, which seems fine.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about that, this whole sentence is kind of ridiculous because a fire suppression system it doesn't use any water.
No, it doesn't.
Except you have an emergency and then nobody cares so much water to put out a fire. So then you compare that to other things that I think the whole thing is constructed in a very weird way how they've connected these particular things.
Well, again, this is an exception to the exemption.
Another exception to exemption to the exemption.
I guess, yeah, I would be on board with improvements that could substantially increase potable water use.
And leave it at that.
Just leave it at that.
Good idea.
DT.
As far as that goes, I'm on board.
Yeah. Yeah, except maybe the wording I don't really like.
The wording, I think the wording could be improved to refer to in compliance with the AD regulations or something.
Yeah, yes, and also the maybe like nix the guest houses and self-contained residential. Those aren't defined terms. Like, what is that?
There,
Or is-
a guest house, I believe, has a definition.
It's not an ADU.
No, but it has a definition
Okay.
in the guest houses and servants' quarters are defined in terms.
Of course.
In the-
Where you're getting this language, yeah, I'm sure they have service quarters issue there. With, So the decision is you're gonna play with the wording a little bit, or you're gonna do it now?
I mean, I would suggest taking out number 5. I mean, a self-contained residential unit is not an improvement to an existing single residence. That is new development. And I think the ADU regulations cover ministerial permits and exemption. I don't know that it's, I can ask coastal commission staff.
Would you just use your best judgment? Yeah.
Okay. Anyone want to opine on Trevor's question of other existing structures? I think you included that to capture the septic system.
Yeah, and it's a question for the coastal commission. I'm sure the planning commission would be happy to exempt repairs. Septics.
Oh, yeah, I see how, okay, great.
And then if you look at the language under 3, and I highlighted it, and that is from the Coastal Act regulations, the exception to the exemption is expansion of existing or construction of new. And I do not think that that applies to repairs.
Right.
Coastal Commission has told me it. But anyway.
Frustrating. Okay, anything else on that page? We'll move on to page 5.
Yeah, sorry, 5 there is the same
Yeah, same discussion.
sentiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. What's on that page? Page 6.
Well, just a little nit there under 2A, the dredging of 100,000 cubic yards or more instead of.
Page 7.
Yeah, a question, this whole paragraph about public roads, utilities and parks and, if you look at the very top where it says, public parks and your comment was, are trails included in this? Yeah, that's a good question. And then the other question becomes, what about trails that are, on easements? Or trails that are easements, I guess I should say. And so it seemed to me that we should clarify what.
But can we include trails?
If it's on an easement, does that mean it's not public?
I mean, why wouldn't it be included, I guess?
Well, that's what I guess my point is, because we talk about, if I read this right. Yeah, we talk about routine maintenance of parks and public facilities. We don't talk about trails.
Yeah,
That's,
that was my question
That's-
is, yeah,
yeah.
it should, seems like they should be included, but.
But if this says facilities instead of utilities, then it would automatically cover trail.
well, maybe we're splitting hairs, but you can have a trail that is not necessarily a public park. If it's under public park, then
Yeah, it should read, or maybe we would like it to read, routine maintenance of existing public parks and trails. Like that,
yeah.
assuming that coastal commission's on.
Do municipalities often designate their trails as parklands?
No, I mean, I think the idea of this is actual parks.
Okay. Yeah, I would look at trails.
I mean, I think most trails are, now there is this specific, so it does refer to this, 1978 document, that is still in effect. That's what these exemptions are based on. I don't think it does talk about trails, but I want to say we did review that and use that when we were looking at Trinidad Head, but that might have been maintenance of the road as opposed to. So yeah, I think it's a question for coastal commission staff. I think it might also depend on where they're located. Most trails are located in areas that are considered more sensitive, so then I don't want them to fall under those exemptions.
I might lobby to reword it to like modification of existing public recreational facilities. Perhaps recreational facilities and conveyances or something that would be getting parks included.
To me, a public trail is a public facility, but I know there's probably room for interpretation on that. It'd be good for it to be more clear.
Yeah. Well, I think it might be the first step is clarifying with coastal commission staff how they interpret it, and then we can decide about it.
Or paragraph 3 right below, I would lump in broadband with that list of utilities.
But repair of broadband facilities, we talk about installation we do.
Yeah, I would just include it, yeah, as repair, maintenance, replacement. Get the full sewer out of there. Guess I'm like.
Well, again, not to be nitpicky, but you could also have other communication infrastructure, such as antennas, communications, etc. So maybe you just want to have a catch-all phrase. Any communication infrastructure, telecommunication infrastructure, something like that. Yeah.
Or you could just say alterations of existing public facilities such as, and then you wouldn't need to include every little thing you could think of. But these would just be the obvious examples.
Good point. Yeah.
Anything else on that page?
Well, I just learned a clarification on your note there under E1. You say that the Coastal Commission changed the wording to match language in 30610. But then it says, seems like IP would be better. The LCP or?
No, so the LCP is made up of the LUP and the IP.
That's what I wanted to clarify. Yeah. So
And it's weird that the Coastal Act language refers to zoning, but there's other ordinances that are part of the implementation plan, like grading ordinance. And so it seemed like any implementation plan or LCP requirements, but so that's another question just for clarification for Coastal Commission.
okay.
In what terminology?
Page 8.
Well, under emergency work, are trails included in that?
Well, I mean, and maybe we don't need that because we have provisions for emergency permit. So.
This is aimed at protecting the property.
And really,
Property.
and it probably that should come out because the idea with the emergency permits is you authorize the minimum amount of work to move forward immediately, but then they still have to come back for a CBA
Right.
later. And that's not what this is. This is an exemption.
Right.
That should probably come out.
Yeah.
Question for you.
Remove that.
Remove the whole thing?
Probably, because I think we have the provisions for emergency permits where I can just authorize work, but they still have to come back for the permit.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
You still have to grant an emergency permit. This would require no permits.
Yeah, and then you wouldn't even have to come back for a permit. And so I don't think the Coastal Commission's let this day. I'm not sure. I'll ask. The nuisance abatement, I'm not sure it really makes sense for Trinidad. Again, it was in the regulations I was pulling from. Seems like it would fit better as an exclusion order if we want to keep it. If the planning commission doesn't care about it, I'll just take it out and worry about it. It's not like the city does a lot of nuisance abatement.
It hardly seems like a planning issue.
I mean, it can be, but nuisance abatement isn't always planning.
It's like a law enforcement thing or something you take to the city council.
We have a nuisance abatement ordinance. It doesn't really talk about if nuisance abatement would I mean, normally nuisance abatement would be you put in a structure without a permit and you have to take that or you come take a permit. I mean, that's the most common one we get.
That really shouldn't have anything to do with the coastal development. That's
Well, except that they have to come back and get an after the fact.
okay. It doesn't seem like it needs to be addressed and stuff.
don't think it needs to be in there. Unless the planning commission feels strongly about it. I've already sent this to coastal commission, so I'll still ask the question.
I go for taking it out.
Got a question there on that same page is appendix B. I think we talked about this before, where that map is.
That is in your,
So that is the, that
Is
is
the
the,
map? Okay,
yeah, this really ugly one.
oh, yeah.
just wanted to make sure.
Moving on to page 9.
I wanted to turn a critical eye to beach. Got it. Retro, yes. Retro near street lamps, basically, right?
Is that what that is?
Yeah, I just didn't Google it. But I feel like we probably should require CDPs, right? A 35-foot streetlight going in, should that require oversight?
Probably. I don't really want to mess with the exclusions right now.
In light of our sort of ongoing discussions of dark sky.
Yeah.
That's what.
But no, I probably shouldn't. I don't know how easy it would be to take out something from an exclusion. Maybe you could do that more easily.
So this is a fairly standardized list here, or is this?
I wouldn't say it's standardized, but this is. So exclusion orders are adopted specifically by for individual jurisdictions, and it's a higher bar. It like requires 2/3 vote, I think, and you have to prove that none of these things are going to have significant impacts on coastal resources. So it's a higher bar than a normal LCP amendment. This is Trinidad's exclusion order from 1985.
Oh, this one right here is.
Yeah.
So these are currently in effect.
These are currently in effect, this 1774.050, they're currently in section 1772. Maybe. It's the section on CBPs and zoning ordinance. Although technically, I don't think they're even supposed. But yeah, so this is what we have now, and amending it is difficult, more difficult than.
Can we change the wording? Like, for
So
example,
that's sort of where I was asking about, can we change the map? As a de minimis amendment, so yeah, I mean, maybe we could take something out, like electrolyte, maybe we could take something out, and that would be like a de minimis minor amendment, so yeah, we could look at, I could ask the question is if we could make minor amendments to this that don't add projects without the full exclusion process.
yeah, I was just, based on our previous discussion on 4C, where it says television and then radio antennas, I would just make that telecommunication supported on, as opposed to just TV and radio.
Is that pretty? I mean, you could build a cell tower on top of your house.
Um,
Would be excluded.
well, you have height limitation of the structure. Didn't we go through this once before with somebody wanted to do something on the top of their roof or?
Yeah, I mean, what about a big, those old satellite dishes?
Those giant ones.
Big giant one.
Those are sweet.
Nobody minds. I'm gonna go close the doors.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess changing it to telecommunications is much more encompassing than television and radio antennas, I guess.
Yeah, because that's not gonna come up very much, and so maybe it's safe to keep it,
Yeah.
because I think certain things like that are excluded from height limits too.
Well, and I think that there are laws on the books that say you cannot force someone not to do it. If it's like a satellite antenna, you cannot say. I think there was some
There are,
federal
there's
regulations.
federal regulations that override local control over like cell towers and poles and wires and things like that, but I don't think that applies to an individual antenna on your roof.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's actually good then.
Okay. Anything else on that page? Sounds like we don't really want to mess with it. Go page 10.
You want to mess with any of this then, really?
No, it's just the exclusion. It's just that one section that is special. And then like C, and that's a question for Coastal Commission staff, because these are projects that already aren't development under the Coastal Act, so why are they even in there?
Just so everyone knows.
Adding volume.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but just the comment on item C4. I don't know what a group R3 or an M occupancy is.
It's a building code reference. I'm not sure if it even still exists. Probably multifamily.
Well, the R3 sounds like it is. I don't know what an M is. Oh, M.
I think both maybe are,
I see.
or manufactured home or something. And might be manufactured.
Why it's only on them.
And and the $2,000 valuation, do we count for inflation in that? That's just.
Yeah, no, I think we could take those out.
I got the whole section.
Yeah, I think C should just be removed.
Oh, yeah.
And just a note on this idea of waivers, so under the Coastal Act, when something requires a permit or isn't exempt, there's a couple of ways to streamline the permits. One is the administrative CDPs that we've been talking about, but administrative CDP, and when we first started talking about ADUs years ago, I looked at waivers and CDP and administrative permits, and it did seem like more ordinances have waivers than administrative permits, or they have both. I thought administrative permits were more useful because you can still add conditions on a project. But their usefulness is limited because they only apply in the non-appealable area. You can't have administrative permits in the appealable area, which is most of the city, most of the parcels of the city. Where waivers are, it would be a staff determination that there aren't any impacts from this project, so it shouldn't require a CDP. And there's standards for that, and that applies anywhere in the city. And so I think there would be some usefulness for waivers. And so we haven't looked at regulations for waivers before, but I am thinking that might be a useful tool.
So you're suggesting leave that in there?
Yeah, that maybe we'll add something for waivers. The trick with waivers is that essentially, and when you're applying through the Coastal Commission, because the Coastal Commission itself also has waivers, the upfront application process is probably more difficult for waivers because you have to meet this really high bar to show that there aren't impacts, because you're not getting a permit that can't add conditions. So you have to come in, like we processed a waiver for the stormwater outfall on Trinidad, as an example. That had to be a very robust application showing public access wasn't going to be affected, water quality wasn't going to be affected, all these different things to manage that application. But it was allowed.
You're convinced us.
We're on page 11.
Well, some of the dates there, working days, et cetera, sound a little aggressive, but I'm not going to worry about it. I mean, it's there. But I did have one question under.
Wait, what? So this was.
The Coastal Commission determination, shall within 5 working days.
Yeah. That seems pretty quick, huh? And
Yeah.
it seems weird to me for the city to dictate how fast the Coastal Commission operates.
They won't pay attention. I mean, you say you need to do it in 5 days, they'll go, yeah. And what's the consequence?
What's your point?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take his own.
It's like, yeah,
Yeah, who's in charge here?
you could put any number in there and they would.
and why is it the executive director and not just local staff?
Yeah.
Well, that's what's going to be the next question down under paragraph A at the bottom there, where it says, unless these requirements are waived by the director. And I don't know, is that the Coastal Commission director? Okay.
Again, I think that's how the regulations are written. So it might be officially the director, but then the director can designate someone at the local office to do that or something. That might be how it works.
It wouldn't be a state law or something that requires this action by the director. I mean, otherwise the 5 days, like, where does it?
I doubt the 5 days is in there, but it might be in the regulations that the executive director has the power to make this determination, but I doubt there's a time limit of 5 days on it.
Do you recall where that language came from?
It would be in the regulations, but no, I don't have the specific citation. Or I copied it from someone else and it might not be in the regulations. Most of these procedures are found in the regulations, but there are exceptions.
It's pretty rare to have something like that in a document like this. Isn't it? Required turnaround time.
I mean, the Coastal Commission, there are a number of time limits. I mean, and there are, there's the Permit Streamlining Act and things that do prevent agencies and jurisdictions from just sitting on permits forever. I mean, that's kind of the idea. So there are some time limits in the Coastal Act, for example, like appeals. And as LCP amendments, Coastal Commission's supposed to act on them with a certain amount of time. Invariably, they ask the jurisdiction for an extension. So that's why the 2012 appeal is outstanding, because we gave them that, they were allowed to have an exception. Now they have no time.
Okay. Moving on, page 12.
But under paragraph A there, about 2/3 of the way down, where it says drainage and erosion control plans, just and at a D.
Anything else? 16.
Yeah, under your first comment there, TP 20, it says at least one public hearing shall be held by the commission. Again, is that the Planning Commission or the Coastal Commission?
Planning Commission.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. It says Planning Commission in the text, but it wasn't clear in your comment, so I just wanted to clarify that.
And I have a question both for the Coastal Commission and the Planning Commission in here regarding noticing times. When I saw different periods of time and different regulations, so I want to clarify with Coastal Commission what those kind of minimums are. But I do know that there are different noticing requirements in the appealable versus non-appealable areas. So, and I think the difference now is in the non-appealable area, the notification area is like 300 feet. So and in the appealable area, it's 100 feet. I guess the idea is that because it's not appealable, you want to notify more, make sure more people are notified. In some ways in Trinidad, that makes some sense because those are or the SR zone parcels that are bigger anyway, so a bigger area makes sense. But one question I had for the Planning Commission is, do you want to have different noticing? Is the city to have different noticing requirements, or do you just go with the most 300 feet everywhere?
Well, maybe you might want to be more serious about notifying the people that are closer. It's not easy to notify. It's like, you're talking about mail.
Well, so there's so for noticing, yes, it's mail. Normally it's required to notify the owner as well as the occupant. We can't do the occupant very well in Trinidad because there's not street delivery. So unless somebody has a water account with a PO box, we can't do that. Trinidad currently says you go hand out notices door to door, and I'm not gonna.
You sure don't want to go through 300 feet radius.
No, I mean, 300 feet in town is much.
Yeah,
That's a lot of notices.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so it's the mailing, it's the posting on site, and then posting in the 3 locations around town.
It's a petty comment, but Trinidad Market, you just say Murphy's.
I could change, I could.
No, but
It'd be a,
unlikely.
it could be Trader Joe's.
Oh,
I mean, you could just say the shopping.
I think it's all right.
Or, I think, the post office and the market are close together. So it might make sense to say the library centers.
I mean, where is it even in the Trinidad Market on that?
There's a bulletin board.
Board out
Bulletin
front.
board out in front?
Yeah.
It's completely covered with. Yeah, stuff like that.
If people look at that bulletin board, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, people know where to find it.
Right. Yeah, we don't need to.
But I've always sort of thought, I mean, the post office and the market are so close together.
Trevor, this is maybe not directly relevant, but will you remind me for material conflict of interest? It's assumed that you have, if you're within 500 feet of.
500 feet, yeah. Unless the
Oh, but generally the exception applies. Yeah, and it seems to me, right, it's assumed that everybody within 500 feet has a material conflict of interest. Would that same radius also probably merits noticing? I mean, I'm in favor of, I guess that's one justification perhaps for favoring casting a broader net here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, is it really? I mean, 500 feet from, View Avenue is within 500 feet of Underwood. Is a project on Underwood really gonna affect?
When you hear about it. There's some level of disengagement in town, clearly.
It's 3 times as much area to go up 500 feet as going out 300.
300 is, I mean, 300 is standard for like subdivision, zoning ordinance amendments. So there's other things that are already 300 feet.
Yeah, I'm certainly not trying to argue that number should be 500 instead, but I think that's people have interest in projects that are more than 300 feet away. So noticing people within 300 feet seems like a reasonable thing to do.
Getting into the planning commission. That's a month.
Well, yeah, I mean, until it's like everyone in town's getting a notice once a month, because then they start going around a bit. But yeah, I mean, whatever seems generally good.
Yeah, the other thing that's seemingly missing from this is that the notice at the development site can be pretty small, right? Like it's thinking about my neighbor's porch project, like that's a little letter-sized yellow piece of paper that would be really easy to overlook.
It's pretty. Yeah.
Thinking about some of the other notices that you see for planned developments that are poster size.
They're easy to miss until you know to look
For. Yeah. I mean, that is the standard. That's what the Coastal Commission uses. That's the form. I know like Caltrans was doing a project around Giantoli and like they had those stuck in the roundabouts. But I mean.
Yeah.
That's a valid point.
Not that I want everyone putting up a poster for all their projects. I mean, how often does a project go through the process in town here and the people who care don't find out about it to come here and speak about it? You'd be opposed. I don't know that there's that many surprises. Maybe there are.
It's possible, and I'm sure it's happened, or people have argued that it's happened, but yeah, I don't.
There's a little bit, if you recall, when the Iraq came for their little development over there. I think one or two people said I didn't know about it and were concerned that they had not been notified, even though they were, I don't know, some distance from.
I think those people were confused as to where it was occurring. Wasn't
Yeah, there was some.
there was some people who thought it was in a
They were
different
from like
spot?
6th Avenue.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's what it was then.
Was there,
And maybe because there was the pipeline or the intertie project going on at the same time, maybe, and so people got confused about what was what.
I remember it like one, maybe two people
Yeah.
who thought it was in a totally different location.
Well, and I will say, I mean, 100 feet there is maybe just one property deep.
and then just to clarify, getting back to that project, right? The people outside of city limits were still noticed, right?
Yeah.
That's right, this is parcels of real property, not parcels of real property within the city limits or something of that sort. Just to continue getting this dead horse. I mean, whatever we can do to get more public engagement, I'm absolutely doing. Not that it's necessarily the type of engagement that we want always, but actually an empty room.
Okay. Do we move on? Just 14.
Oh, yeah, so CDP findings. This is a good conversation for the planning commission, and this is, you know, again, these are under initial review by the coastal commission too, so we don't need answers for everything tonight, but I think essentially minimum is you have to make findings that it conforms. So the second comment there conforms to all applicable sections of the certified LCP, conforms with the public access and public recreation policies of Chapter 3 of the Coastal Act. And maybe that it will be cited and designed to prevent adverse impacts to coastal resources. I'm not sure if that's required. But essentially, you're making findings that it's consistent with the LCP and consistent with the Coastal Act. Now, but a lot of ordinances have a larger set of findings than that. So I provided a couple of examples. I guess let's see what I combined some findings from Pacific Grove and Fort Bragg. I thought they were pretty different sets of findings. Santa Cruz County was a different set of findings. And I think I gave you some references to the staff reports. So that you definitely have some flexibility in these findings and how you want them worded and what you want to emphasize in your findings for approving or denying a CDP. But I think, you know, consistency with the LCP, consistency with the Coastal Act, and impacts to coastal resources are coming here now.
You thinking that there might be something missing here?
No. But you know, these are fairly detailed and extensive, and you do not need all of those findings. They're not required by the coast act, so. And you have flexibility to add, remove, change.
I don't know that I'm ready to give them like a wrong endorsement, but I don't see any red flags at first glance.
No,
Or were there ones that you were specifically curious about?
No, like I said, I sort of combined them. I pulled ones that I thought that I liked or seemed applicable to Trinidad. I maybe threw more in there than are probably necessary just to give you the more of a breadth of what they are. I mean,
Do you recall what you might have omitted? Does it make the cut?
no, but I could certainly provide some other examples.
So we're saying essentially this is a good list. That's what we're saying.
That's what we're saying, unless you want to nix some things from it.
I think it makes sense.
I was more thinking if there's something that you think should be added.
No, but I could put some other examples of things. I could give you a list of things you could consider adding.
You have to look at it.
So make sure you don't skip over something. I mean,
Yeah.
Project, a list of findings that are required. If some of them, you could probably take, 10 seconds to say. Good.
Their comment tied in with some of them on page 57 as well, right? Comment TP32 on packet page 57. This can now refer to 1774-100 by reference here as an example. Alternative set of findings.
Yeah, so that is a different set of findings. You're correct. Yes. There's another example there. So these administrative CDP regulations we developed a few years ago with the ADU ordinance that we were looking at a few years ago. And so that's why there's more comments and responses from Coastal Commission. And they had their own findings because the city didn't have CDP findings. So we put findings in the administrative permits. But now that could just refer to the findings in the previous section. Same with notification requirements, application requirements. They can all just refer to these regulations.
So meaning that this whole section goes away?
Just F. So on page 57, just F. F would refer to the previous section. Because you don't need separate findings for an administrative permit. You would just use your regular CDP permit. But this is an example, as Chris was saying, this is an example of a different set of findings.
Good point.
And yet some of them are more specific. They don't read quite as generalized.
And I do not remember where I got those findings. That was some time ago.
They don't read as well as the other findings.
What page are we on now? I'm sorry.
Well, we were on 14 and 15.
Just jumped ahead.
Yeah, so but because of the relationship.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else on 14 or 15? Are we ready to go to 16? So 16.
So based on the comments that are down here, you've had conversation with.
Coastal Commission staff have reviewed these.
And so this is,
So the comments, TG, the blue comments are Tamara from Coastal Commission.
it's our best interest to make sure remain, is that what you're saying? Cameron's comments.
No. I mean, I guess I included them for reference since you've seen these regulations before. Maybe it was too much.
I wonder how long this $100,000 number has been out there on documents. Or they upgrading it with inflation?
There's I don't know if it's this number, but I know there's somewhere where they have some valuations and they do update that. 100,000 seems like pretty even enough. I have seen where they do keep that up.
Well, it makes it sound like it's an approximate when you use a number.
100,000,
figure.
$5 isn't gonna cut it.
Can we move on to 17?
Well, yeah, it actually is a continuation from
Yeah.
16, that top item 2, if it involves known or probable public opposition or controversy.
Wow.
I don't even know how to put it in context of not be granted if the development that involves probable public opposition.
You don't think you could look at a project and decide whether it's probably gonna be controversial or not? I think I can.
Well,
You're in a unique position to do that.
well, I guess my point is that it says exceptions, an administrative coastal development permit shall not be granted for any development that, if it involves known or probable public opposition or controversy.
Yeah. So then it'd need a full permit and have to come to you. So if I think it's gonna be controversial, I send it to you.
Oh, so you think that's the way that's supposed to be?
Yeah.
Aha, I see. Okay.
So if it's a sign, a cell tower.
Okay, I see your point. Okay.
Yeah, you just hope that the city flame room always has it's good.
Now, administrative, that's true, one was new hire. But administrative permits are reported to the planning commission. Planning commission, and they are noticed. So people can object and the planning commission can pull it and say, do you want? And they are appealed to the city. They come to you. There are appeal procedures as well. Yeah, so they could be appealed. So if I issued an administrative permit, they are appealable.
Clears that up for me. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like if you issued a permit and one person came here to oppose it, it would no longer fit the bill of the administrative permit based on the sentence Richard had, right?
Well, I don't know if I'd consider one person public opposition. I guess that's partially up to you, because again, it does get, so if you look at, so report to the planning commission starts at G. So you will get a staff report and the neighbors get noticed. And if 1/3 of the planning commissioner's request, then it gets pulled for a full. So that would sort of be up to you to decide.
How do you do 1/3 of the planning commission?
So I was gonna ask that.
There more, I mean, it'd just be minimum of 1/3.
Well, what's 1/3? I mean, is that 3 people? I mean, 3 people to 4 people?
135.
Or
That way.
do we split ourselves in pieces?
Isn't a third. It'd have to be 3.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. 2 is definitely a third.
It's more than.
Oh, yeah, more, okay, so it'd be 2.
Me too. So you don't need a majority. It's I guess the
Yeah.
intent. But yeah, could say 2/5.
So best leave it alone until somebody comes along and adds 2 more people to the planning commission.
I mean, to be honest with you,
Planning commissions have, there are more.
yeah, it's just, and to be honest with you, I'd be happy to review something that any plan commissioner has. Anyone?
It seems like you might need to get some support from at least one other.
I mean, that, I think
I like
that
to.
I'm trying to think, I think,
Sounds like you have support whoever is.
so on the coastal commission, trying to think. And one coastal commissioner appeal. If it requires 2, I forget, but there's a. No, there's a bunch of.
Well, in our case, if one person had a strong sense of doing that,
They could
it would be their job to convince,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
hopefully the majority, you know.
I mean, I don't, that's up to you guys. I don't think that's limited in the coastal act.
Leave it alone.
Yeah. Okay. On page 18 now. Or was there anything else on 17?
Nope.
Okay, 18.
And just a note, the emergency CDPs, that's currently in chapter 1772, so that I just pulled that over here. Same with appeals, although the appeals procedures, did I amend them? Yeah, I did, because our current appeals section does not meet coastal act requirements, so this is new language. That would replace the appeals section of 1770.
I would, let's skip on to 2021.
And then do you like NOFA as your acronym or PLAN as your
That's just what I
acronym?
was going to ask.
NOFA is notice of final action, which is what I'm using currently. But I've also seen final local action notices.
Maybe you don't need an acronym.
It is delicious.
It's not the acronym.
I know you do.
No opinion.
What was the flag again? Final
Final local
local.
action notice, I guess.
What is more common? Which is more?
I think NOFA is more common. Or NOLA. It could also be NOLA. Notices of local action.
I think you should workshop and bring us 10 or 12. I'm not satisfied with the one.
Make sure you get one that somebody can't twist up really easy and make us look foolish.
Like a crap. It's the action.
Okay, page 22. Three.
I think it's just a typo in the middle there, the highlighted area. Reference subsection B below. I don't see where subsection B is, so I think it's just, you're referring to something else, but I wasn't sure what. It's C.
Yeah, but that's it, because that's the extensions.
Okay,
That's referring to
yes,
extension.
got it.
Okay, last page. All right, let's open it up to some public comment. Is there any public comment on these 24 pages that we just went through? Hearing none, we'll bring it back, and I guess moving forward with this, you're gonna make some edits at some point.
I'm gonna be talking to coastal commission staff about so I'm trying to streamline this, and I brought it to you and the coastal commission staff at the same time. I'll get both the comments, hopefully do a new version. As I mentioned, I think there's not as much flexibility in these regulations as some others, so because it kind of follows the coastal act regulations. Hopefully it'll be fairly straightforward.
Okay.
So the next version you're going to clear out the comments that are in this section.
Like for the administrative permits? Yeah, probably, or I'll include responses, but yeah, probably the administrative permits, I could take out those, because
Comments on top of comments. I don't know if I'm going to a third generation of that, but this is like the second.
For the conservation, open space and recreation element, I think I had to submit three versions, so back to coastal commission staff, because there were so many comments and then responses to comments and edits. I had to just accept them and delete them like 3 times to get them. So
This group was exposed to all that. And this group was exposed to all that.
I don't know if they well, I think you guys
Certainly like we
you guys
did.
did see it at some point.
Yeah.
I think you saw it. Which is why I said the safety element didn't.
Great, let's move on to agenda item number 2, design guidelines. We'll revisit those. Trevor. Or do we need to take a break? What's everyone doing?
But up to another meeting, let's get into it.
All right, we'll carry on. But everyone wants to put it off, but I feel like we want to visit this one
Yeah.
tonight.
We've also seen it a handful of times in the recent past.
Yeah, that's. So, all right, Trevor, please.
Yeah, so obviously we've kind of talked about the idea of having the design guidelines as some sort of policy. It's been on the future agenda items. We talked about, we've got some bigger projects coming up. I do not think that the Cavers project is going to make it on the September agenda. I did send out referrals. It's possible, but I think probably not. I did run this by the city attorney as well. So he suggested a resolution, but I think using this policy format that we've used before is consistent with our after the fact permit policy and our policies for approving detached living spaces. It provides a little bit more guidance. It's officially adopted, so it's something we can hand to applicants. It's something you can discuss at meetings. One thing that the city attorney noted is some of these findings maybe go beyond the existing findings, the regulatory findings. So, one thing to be aware of is that you're not going to be denying a project because it doesn't meet one of these policy guidelines. You have to stick to making your decision based on the regulatory findings that we currently have. So our current design review findings are the measure by which projects are approved or denied. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. I did add some language suggested by the city attorney that, these do not supersede the adopted guidelines. They're, not independently from the adopted guidelines, those sorts of things. But some of the guidelines are pretty vague, like compatible with the rustic, rural, uncrowded nature of the community. What the heck does that mean? So I think that the idea is that you're using these guidelines to help you make those requirements. And so these are guidelines that we developed in the past, but they're not necessarily a priority for trying to get through the Coastal Commission at this time. Got to deal with ADUs and see other things that are sort of regulatory requirements. The red here are references to the general plan community design guidelines. So that's the GPs. The DR are the design review criteria, VP are the view protection criteria. So those are the adopted regulatory standards. There's a couple others. There's one or two references, I think, to the views of vegetation ordinance, and there's a couple references to Coastal Act. So, and there might be a couple that are blank where I was like, I don't know that these really apply. But anyway, so that's what the red, so the red is the references to those adopted findings that these are helping you make. And so then I did include those at the back here, from the general plan appendix B. So those suggested guidelines and then the actual design review and view protection criteria are in there. Oh, and some of the coastal act sections that I cited as well. We also, at the last meeting, talked about story polls again and providing direction to applicants as to what projects require story polls. I think as written, it's pretty much all projects require some sort of story polls. I also thought of photo simulations. So like with this new project, I was like, you guys, I think you need to do some photo simulations. I think the Coastal Commission will ask for it anyway, but I said, I think story polls are one thing, but I think the design, the bulk, that sort of thing, it's architectural drawings don't give you a sense of really what it's going to look like. So I think you could maybe add photo simulations in there as well. I highlighted that because we didn't have those provisions in the procedures that we had developed previously. So yeah, so I'm looking for feedback on this to bring back a policy. Unless you want to adopt it as is, but, edits, changes to bring back a policy for adoption and to use to help you make the.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Anyone start with questions from her staff report? Or
I think I would just add, maybe for the benefit of Roland, that we've seen these quite a bit in the recent past. I think it was It was Tristan and I who actually requested to see these again because not long after we basically finalized what became this set of policies, we got a bunch of projects to review. And so they're like, well, wait a minute, now I would like some, I'd like to go back and look at those guidelines.
I appreciate that background, because, yeah.
Now they've actually got some, the grants using some rough version of them to critique projects.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we do, as part of the general plan update, we developed a community design element. And so a lot of these are from those policies for community design that includes lighting and signs and then I think as part of one of the housing grants, they wanted more objective design standards. And so we looked at, that's where these design standards came from, based on the draft general plan policies. We developed these new design standards, but they were never adopted. We got through the grant, but we found that, we're not going to have objective design standards that can be applied ministerially. That they kind of got.
But is that a goal then to get it to enough detail where you can do it in ministerially?
It might come to a head at some point because that's what the state wants for new housing projects. And we might have to, like, multifamily housing projects have to have objective design standards. But we're never going to have affordable multifamily housing projects in Trinidad. So I think it's a non-issue. But yeah, so that's what the state wants. And I think the planning commission would like something more objective, like what is significant view blockage? What is consistency with community character? So these aren't objective, but I think they help you make those determinations.
Just guide you to the
Yeah.
different variables. Okay, that's what I got.
I have one question for Trevor really quickly, and I'm just curious what the audience for this policy is. My assumption is it's for the planning commission, right?
It is for the planning commission, but also applicants.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
and I did, when the Cavers application, when I first started talking to the agent, I believe I gave them the draft deck.
Got my attention specifically was under the story polls and photo simulations. There's a line at the very end of that paragraph that says, the planning commission does not have enough information to make the required findings. Your project may be delayed due to a planning commission request for story polls.
Oh, you know what?
I think it should read the project.
Yeah. I might have. Yeah, I might have pulled that because we also developed the new application forms and guides, and I might have pulled that language.
When I first looked at this, I'm glad we put this all together, but then I asked the same question, who's the audience? And to me, this is more, to me at least, it seems more applicable to the applicant. Try to give them some direction. But then I started thinking about it, and maybe it's just as simple as putting some sort of disclaimer on this or something, because this could really an applicant down the wrong road and would not really understand some of the requirements that they may have to meet. And as an example, just looking at signs, we talk about signs here, and it's pretty general. I get that. But then in the ordinance, there are very specific size and area dimensions, those kinds of things. And I worry that if someone just looked at this and said, oh, I can put a sign up, they would not understand that there are maximum amounts of signage necessary. There's, an individual sign can only be a certain size, as well as construction. And so I guess what I was, and like I said, maybe the simplest thing is just put a big disclaimer on this that says these are not the rules, if you will. But just kind of give you some very, very general guidelines, but you have to go back and you have to comply with the actual ordinances for all of these issues.
Good point.
Because yes, if you hand this to an applicant, they might think, oh, I can put a sign. Sign can be a flashing
Just have to minimize it. Yeah.
20 by 20 sign, you know?
And minimize to some one person.
Wasn't it just the second paragraph here where it says these guidelines are non-binding interpretive guidance?
Yeah, but that's got to be in big, that has to be in big bold letters in my mind. I mean, it's buried. You're right. It's
Well,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's buried in there. And just another real quick comment is, I think that there is a lot of interest in doing a night sky ordinance, or what do you call it? And that's not here really at all.
Well, there's the lighting and the darks.
Yeah, there is. You're right.
I think it is without saying.
Yeah,
This sort of was my.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on page 6, it does talk about lighting, and but I just wondered if we wanted to. Of course, we don't have the night sky ordinance yet.
We did these before we had the night sky, but it was
Right.
headed in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it talks about, spillage and.
yeah, all that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think color temperature might be the only thing from our preliminary discussion that's missing. Yes.
I mean, you could say lights that comply with international dark sky standards are preferred. That could be part of the guidance.
Yeah, no harm in including that.
And I also sort of contemplated a disclaimer of sorts that just says something like, these are indeed the subjective guidelines that the planning commission is likely to consider when considering.
But you're talking about basically beefing up this very first page where it says use of these guidelines, getting more specific, right up front.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the place for it, right after purpose. I clearly thought about this a lot. I'm just reading through it.
These guidelines are non-binding and not all inclusive and guidance or something of that sort.
Yeah, just so it highlights that you got to go elsewhere. Specifics.
How, I guess with that in mind, this is non-binding. How do you balance that with the use of the word shall throughout all of this?
That's a good point. I just copied what we had as draft regulations that are worded as shall, so we should probably change all the shalls to should.
It will.
Yeah, or will.
That's very inconsistent.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We also have a lot of terms, things start off with required so-and-so. Well, you leave a sentence with required, it doesn't sound like, well, hopefully
But
you
see,
should consider instead of required.
but that's where I think it's important that whoever's looking at this document know that they have to go back to the source document.
Some document has requirements.
Yes.
And shall.
Yes, 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 right.
Yeah, you brought it.
So, do you think I should, I mean, I do worry, like, under grading, I could refer to the grading index. For signs, I could refer to the sign regulations. I could refer back to, but some of these don't have regulations, or they're more spread out. You might miss some. So I want to be careful about saying, oh, you have to follow these regulations when there might be some other. So I don't, I mean, that's why people hire consultants to design their projects who know how to, I mean.
So why did you come up with a guideline section in the first place rather than just having everything in an ordinance? Or
Well, one, so to put this in the ordinance would require going through the coastal commission. That's just, that's a big process, I think. And we've got other things we've got to get done, other priorities or pressures outside the city, like the ADU ordinance. So that's part of it. But I think that, when I was researching these, a lot of design guidelines are in separate policy guideline documents. They're not in.
it does seem like the introduction to this is to be very specific about things like that. Why? It's like, well, we're avoiding going through the coastal commission. Well, isn't that our job? I mean, they're the ultimate decider on so.
Well, we're not avoiding it. I think that's why we sort of just put it on the back burner is. But then we realize now we have all these big projects coming and we've got these guidelines. So it would be nice to figure out a way to use them to some degree without having to go through that year or two long process of going through the coast.
So could you do something like footnotes and something like this? Looks like what Richard was talking about, where if there's a thing that's being suggested here, but that behind that is an actual regulation, then,
Well, where we've been able to do it, we have those.
Yeah, I see. Well, I see those those little abbreviations. Which,
but that's another thing too. I think that needs to be clarified a little bit more in the.
I was not going to include those in the final policy, but if you want me to.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I mean, they might have some use, but they don't know, I wasn't necessarily going to include them, but they certainly could be included.
or maybe an appendix or something.
I mean, I think just having them as they are with an explanation for what that means to people is good. I mean, an appendix could turn into a stat,
Well, yeah, but it would at least be connected to the issue that's been brought up. I mean, to misleading the public into thinking that this is all, something we'd like to see, but you don't really need it. And then hit the wall sometime when a disconnected document is put in their face.
Well, they just have to do some digging, I guess, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
And this
really
is
want
just
the
like the
public
overview.
digging, I mean, yeah, think up consultants and all that. That's their job to know.
Well, I mean, without these, they have to do their digging and homework.
Yeah.
And I think this is giving people a little bit more surety in terms of, hopefully it gives them a little bit, right now they take the design guidelines and I'm like, oh, rustic fishing village, what does that? I mean,
Yeah, that kind of stuff should come out.
and that's what's in there now. So I think this is intended to help focus people's design. But they still need to pay attention to the regulations like they always have. There shouldn't be an excuse for them to ignore that.
So I think then in my mind, I was missing that middle part. And that is, yeah, they come to you before they come to us. And if they're using this as kind of a guideline, they show you the project and you go, oh, that won't work. You have to make sure that you're using this regulation.
Yeah, yes.
So you're kind of a course corrector before.
So like, yeah, so, yeah, with the Cavers application, I wouldn't necessarily go through all these lighting things, but like they included some information on lighting on their application, but there were other things on their application. I was like, oh, no, you have to change this and it has to meet this. And they submitted a revised plan.
So as long as somebody like you, since in your chair,
As long as we have
they're covered fairly well.
Well, yeah, but you also hope that people, like they came to me first, I think in January. And so, I've been talking to them for months about some of these, and the geologic reports and the septic stuff, so there's been a whole process of them developing their application.
You have a more sophisticated applicant there. So it's like,
This one?
well, once they got consultants involved, or no, they're doing it all on their own. Okay, they're using you as a consultant.
No.
Okay.
I thought you said they had an agent. But they don't have.
I mean, it's also,
Yes, they.
it is, the document is also titled Supplemental Design Guidelines.
Right. Supplemental, and they're just guidelines. Yeah.
Not to use that as a counterpoint to any of your very valid comments either, but.
No, I think you're right. I mean, exactly. I just want to make sure that that's front
Yeah.
and foremost
I
that
think
people.
that's
know.
important.
Yeah, as
To highlight that.
Yeah.
They are.
long as Trevor's the gatekeeper, we're in good shape.
So if you handed this to somebody tomorrow who basically came in with a project, I mean, just exactly like this. And they would see the guidelines, they would see these footnotes in red that guide you to actual regulations. You just told them that.
Do you think they should stay in red? Or set some color?
I don't think
That's not a question that I was thinking could arrive from this discussion, honestly. But I mean, the fact that you have essentially little reference points here that are, they clearly are code. They don't know the code. But you could also send them to the written regulations. And they would have what they need.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And I can certainly add a little bit more description at the beginning here is, both the purpose and the use of the guidelines, that these supplement just these, section 176040 and 050 of the zoning ordinance. All the other zoning ordinance requirements still apply to your project. I can definitely add some language.
I mean, there's the thing is about using the guidelines. Number two, these do not amend or supersede the general plan. So that's their notice. But maybe you just say a little bit more about that. It's like these will control what actually you're required to do. But this guidelines will help direct you into what you're facing and putting your project in. put it in simple, simple language. It's awful easy to read over a comment like that. You just go, I demand your supersede, you immediately just block, pay attention.
I think if I can interject for just a moment, looking at the use of these guidelines section, I think that's really good. I also think that that first item is the primary function of this document. So I think you could say something like these guidelines assist in applying the adopted design review and leak protection criteria, and furthermore, then add the rest of those as bullet points.
Yeah, that kind of
Because
like.
item one really is the primary purpose. Sorry, this document.
Any other comments on the overarching guidelines? Do you guys want to go through it page by page? Are there many edits before just talking about? I mean, hopefully not too many. Oh, sure. Let's have some public comment. Sherry?
Thank you for allowing me to have a comment. And I will wait if you go through the sections as a group, but just as I was reviewing it on page 2 of 8, where it has cultural resources, there was a couple of questions I had on number 2. Any landform alterations or structural construction within 100 feet of the Shoreline Management Area, as defined by the Trinidad General Plan, or within 100 feet of lots of which are identified historical resources are located. My question for the Planning Commission is, do you know what those identified historical resources are? We should probably identify that. Number 2, the other says, including Trinidad Cemetery and Memorial Lighthouse. Now, the lighthouse, the physical lighthouse has been moved down to the Trinidad Rancheria sovereign land. How does this ordinance change this at all? If it does, we might want to identify that land where the lighthouse used to be is still land that we want to protect. But then the lighthouse is down at the pier area or down by the parking lot. Does that change the ability for this ordinance to affect public views that are not obstructed with 100 feet? So those are just some quick thoughts I had about that particular section. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Those are good points.
Yeah, I think this whole paragraph needs to be rewritten.
Yeah, this was probably written before the lighthouse was moved. There is a view protection criteria about things within 100 feet of these sites. The church listed, I mean, I think the church is might be in that design review finding, but certainly the Catholic Church would be a historic resource that's been identified. We have not done a historic structure inventory. There's probably the Trinidad Art Building as the other old one, and then the building that was moved that the museum's in probably was, but now it's been moved, so it probably doesn't have that historic significance. But now as time moves on, more and more structures are now 50 years old.
Were you putting historic in here with cultural resource? Say that?
I mean, historic resources are cultural resources as well.
Could you say something in that very first?
And it's the dry study area. I was proposing to change the name because there's the 12.5 acres versus the map dry study area, but that hasn't been officially changed, so. So yeah, that paragraph definitely, so.
I know it's still in revision, but maybe there should be a concerted effort to make the language here consistent with the cultural and historic resources element.
Yeah, that's on hold right now. I could look and see what the most recent.
We good on that, the cultural resources segment. I want to talk a little bit about story polls this evening. I mean, the way this guidance is currently written, it's suggesting that all projects need it, and haven't had it on but one project since I've been on the commission, and with nobody asking for it either. So I kind of, and I guess I've been comfortable with that. Maybe other commissioners have not been comfortable with that, but haven't voiced it.
Did we?
I know the
Last month?
deck it was mentioned. But yeah, with your project, did you put up, no, it wasn't asked for.
Or the Neil's Ewald project, or
Neil's didn't need, yeah, okay.
or the
And the,
addition at the raw wines, they didn't do it.
But that's because we have been inconsistent with applying a requirement. I realize we don't have a formal requirement, but we've been very inconsistent with whether or not we should have story polls or not. And I think my feeling is on this is that the story polls aren't for us. The story polls are for the public so that they understand what is happening in their communities. And it has been several cases, notably next door to you several years ago with John Block, where the story polls went up and it became quite a controversy in the neighborhood. So I like the idea of having this here because it then makes it very consistent. Now, if we want to have a method where, for example, staff can say, based on the size of the project, based on the goals of the project, the surrounding environment, no story polls are required, that is okay too. But I think we need to start with the discipline of having them and then back off as we feel is useful. Anyway, that's mine.
I mean, I think that's fine to have. I guess I would like to see a caveat similar to what you just described, where it's like city planner. I mean, Trevor has maybe this is unique to our current city planner, but she has a pretty good idea of which projects are going to potentially be problematic and which ones nobody's have issue with. And I think the need for story polls often coincides with that. And so if we could leave it to her discretion or have a caveat to leave it to her discretion, I guess that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing.
Maybe we're saying the same thing.
And the thing I guess I want to avoid is somebody coming to Trevor and says, I don't want to put up story poles if it's too late or too expensive, or I don't know how to do it or whatever. As if they understand that it's a requirement up front, maybe a requirement up front, then they can be prepared for it. And then Trevor can make the decision, staff can make the decision on whether or not, based on simple criteria, whether or not it's applicable and necessary.
Especially if they're told up front that it's really helpful and avoid conflict, because if it generates conflict later, we might very well then require it.
Good point.
And that's kind of what this says, here, so, yeah.
You mean-
Maybe it's more of an, I mean, that last sentence that says, all of the following guidance is not required. Planning Commission does not have enough information. Findings, the project may be.
Again, you get the wording, the following 9 non-binding guidance is provided, and then it says the story pole shall be required. So it's like, oh,
Right.
So maybe we need to change the wording of A there.
Yeah, and then,
And it could say particularly where views or bulkiness is an issue, and
Right.
that's.
It kind of does already, right? In the introductory paragraph. Photo simulations and story polls allow the public and planning commission.
Yeah, in terms of its bulk and scale.
Scale and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what-
Yeah, it's-
I guess, yeah, I think no, you're right. But bullet A could be softened, I guess.
Yeah.
And then maybe bullet G at the end, where it says that you may waive or modify the requirements. Maybe, but it's sort of the reasons for that you might do that are sort of special, I guess. And maybe there's some non-special reasons. Yeah, make it more general. Why it's just a non-special project in a non-special area that doesn't need authority. Songs. But I guess all the guidance for how those should be set up was good.
Not to make things more complicated, but there's so much guidance here for story polls and virtually no guidance for photo simulations.
We did not have any guidance for photo simulations. That's why I highlighted it, because I was thinking maybe you want to add it.
And I don't know that we need A through G for photo simulations.
Ooh.
This one.
This is 2 different kinds of senses that you're, asking people. A lot of people look at photos in a 2-dimensional and don't really see the same thing that you do when it's there. So
I think both are good. I mean,
the best would be both.
yeah,
Sure.
especially for a project that's really in a prominent location.
But I mean, you can hire an ordinary person to put up story poles and do it yourself. But everybody doesn't know how to do a photo simulation.
I mean, photo simulations are, I think, easier to do though too these days, and especially if you're doing a prominent house part of the process.
You've got a modern day architect at hand, of course. I didn't think twice about it.
Obviously, there's a lot to be fleshed out there, but I would just say that off the top of my head, a photo simulation should be presented from each of the cardinal directions.
Well, but I think more importantly, is really more from more public viewing point. So the street, like thinking about that project down there, Edward Street, the beach, Trinidad Head, the harbor parking lot. The direction from the north doesn't matter as much, maybe. So I think that, so I think I think that's more
Neighbors,
circumstantial. As opposed to northeast, west, south, I think it could be,
No, yeah, I agree with Trevor. From the viewing points, I think you're concerned regarding with the neighbors' views. I mean, were they gonna take a picture from the neighbor's window? I mean, if the neighbor
that's
allows them to
just
do
a
so.
story. Yeah,
But yeah, maybe this better for the.
I mean, I can certainly try and find something that someone else has done. But I think it could also be written as. I mean, as the 4 cardinal directions might be a starting point. But but depending on circumstances. I think also distance is important in terms of what you're looking at.
Yeah,
You know, and with this one from the south could be Trinidad Head and the Harbor parking lot.
Yeah,
I mean, that's 2 different views from the south.
No, yeah, of course. I guess I was less married to the idea of 4 cardinal directions and more to from multiple perspectives.
Yeah,
Because it wouldn't be
Yeah.
easy to imagine as currently written that hey, someone just submits one photo from. I don't know.
Did you actually the term
Yeah, right.
appropriate number or something?
Yeah, right.
It'd be interesting to see what other people have
Yeah.
said about that.
Got anything else on these?
If you're softening the requirement for story poles, it just seems intense then to require an affidavit certifying that the story poles of the correct height, the foundation, and footprint, and so on and so forth. Like, if they are required, they also still meet that.
Yeah, I think if they are required, we want them to be accurate.
They might not have to be an affidavit when it's a guideline.
I mean, like what legal
Yeah.
foot do we have to
Yeah.
require that?
Yeah.
The building inspector get.
Or just submit assurance.
Yeah, I mean,
Just need to say that they're reasonably accurate. I mean.
yeah, they just need to be reasonable because of course they're not going to be perfect, but
No.
Yeah, and I think someone who knows what they're doing could go by and say, that's not, can look at the plan and
yeah.
say it's not accurate.
I tell you, I'm gonna have to read these a lot more closely than I did. Because I see where it's all going in the history here. Pretty important document.
This is something that when we've talked about it, we've tried desperately to like solicit input from the public because this is where we really do try to establish the character of the community.
Right.
And every time the room looks like this.
Right.
Now, I didn't pick it up in here, maybe it was just implied, but in these project designs do require something about landscaping, right? But I just heard a conversation the other day about, or you had a project that's after a long time, but then vegetation they had was a kind of vegetation that just grew to the point that it became a problem. The neighbors. Is that can be considered in here at all? What is actually?
I thought it was in here.
So are you talking about landscaping? There is something.
I didn't pick that up specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
story
right
pole
on page 7 of the document.
Board on page 2. For landscaping, they shall indicate the maximum anticipated extent of the growth.
Okay.
for the story
Or
poles.
landscaping, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, you tied the story poles, okay, I was,
And on page 4, permitted development, including landscaping, shall be sited and designed to protect views of the ocean and shoreline.
But isn't there a section on?
Yeah, it's on page 7. And then
Yeah.
respect the height and scale, clearly should be considered.
Not that anybody ever shows their landscaping on their plans, but that will be a requirement.
What's a big one? Right, I mean. The house isn't gonna grow.
Well, yeah, as Diane will remind you, the landscaping is a serious issue.
And then, you know,
Or
each time I.
Very challenging to,
It is, there might be.
if not impossible.
There's maybe one coming up, we'll see, so.
So we're past 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna maintain that energy to get through this.
Heck yeah.
you're on the clock, but
Getting OT. Should we move on? You guys ready? Okay, great, thank you. Let's go to commissioner reports. If there are any. And none, we'll go to staff reports.
Okay. Let's see, the Trinidad finally got an RFQ out for RFP for planning services. I'm on hold on several things, waiting for coastal commission comments. Sent out referrals on the covers project, as I mentioned, may or may not be ready for September agenda. I'm looking at, I will be preparing an item for adoption of the regional climate action plan for the city council in September. Otherwise, I'm finishing up some LCP grant tasks. And just continuing on with some other things. The main thing I wanted to point out is I've been working with Aaron on some way to be able to track tasks. So we looked at our priorities, planning priorities, and kind of being able to give, whether it's monthly or quarterly updates to the planning commission and the city council, for the city council to understand what we're working on. So this is our latest iteration. It looks really complicated. When I first got it, I was like, this is ridiculous. But it's actually not that bad. It's kind of all automated. Like the pages you're seeing here is all automatically generated from other entries. So once it's built, and Aaron built most of it, and I think he probably used AI, he's not here to present it, but once it's built, it's pretty easy to just add updates as they come around. So anyway, I was just looking to see what you guys thought of this format. Is there information you don't need? Is there information that's not on here? One thing I'm not sure about is how easy it would be. I think I can reorder things pretty easily or hide things. So like once we get done with the LCP grant, just hide it for the future or delete it or whatever. But anyway, and I think, we'll probably talk more about it next month when Aaron's back. But do you have any comments at this point? Try and incorporate them.
I think this is a good thing to have to kind of track where we are.
Mhm.
It's very,
I think it is too. I mean, again, I spun my wheels a lot on it and just how to present it, how to categorize things, how to and keep it so keep it updated, because I think it is like look at, oh yeah, we said we wanted to do that 3 months ago. Where is that? Or like for the council to understand what staff and the planning commission are working on. You know, I don't, our start date's important. Going back and filling in start dates now, but for new projects, it'd be easy to add start dates. But yeah, it's actually, I haven't played with adding deliverables a whole lot. Just don't show it too much on this sheet, but yeah, I think it could work well. And I think it's something that you can keep adding to in the future and just hide the old stuff that you're done.
It's actually pretty amazing when you look at the amount
Yeah.
of different things that are on here.
Project.
How is it sorted? Do these tasks match up with that other document we got?
Yeah, we could look. So I think Aaron used the first task, the LCP grant task. He pulled that out of our LCP grant progress report. So this was our latest progress report that we submit quarterly. It's in a Word document, but it's got similar data, and so he filled all that in those tasks and those updates. So like some say no work this period. You probably don't care about, like, maybe I just leave it blank, but for that report, it said no work. Other things I just left blank. And
But
then
it's not like hierarchical with the smaller.
this is just how they were entered. But I think you could sort these. You could probably sort them by date. It's, sort them by different categories. You could sort them by what's active, probably. I assume I haven't tried to do a lot of editing. That's one thing I worry a little bit about because everything's automated. How easy this is going to be to manipulate and edit, but Aaron said it's all sortable and you can rearrange things. So I think that's fine. But yeah, and then the general plan tasks I prepared that matrix for the city council, I think April. So that's what I think those are from. There's definitely some overlap on that with the LCP grant stuff. And then the rest I just took the list of our priority projects and kind of categorized them. And he put them in here as how I categorize them. So these are all from essentially our list of priority projects that we looked at this spring.
There's quite a few things here at the top there. Where the next deliverable is due in the year 2173.
2173.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh.
I don't think I'll be on the commission.
I've got a lot of time for that. Okay.
So Josh, your commission.
Yeah.
Well, that gives you a lot of.
I can do that.
Be very relaxed by year 2173.
Well, I didn't catch that one.
I didn't catch that one either. Maybe because I didn't, like I said, I didn't spend much time looking at deliverables. That's
Yeah, but sooner or later, that's going to be the thing you have to pay attention.
yeah. Although, I mean, there's not a lot of projects that grants obviously have deliverables and due dates, but a lot of other projects we don't set up so that we have a due date necessarily, but I guess it is nice to say, hey, we're working on this. We'd like to get it done by the end of the year.
We also would have to prioritize and then get a sense of, timeframes before you prioritize. It's one thing to prioritize something that's important, but it takes a year's worth of work to do versus something that might ordinarily have a lower priority, but can be done in a couple of months.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better.
Yeah, it'd be nice to,
off your list.
yeah, it'd be nice to get some low hanging fruit. There's also ways like general plan update. Well, that's kind of a forever, but if you break it down in smaller tasks, then you can track those a little easier.
For me personally, I love the most recent update column. So those are the questions that I found myself wondering. about them. I was like, didn't we look at this sometime last year? So it's really nice to see, especially all the detail that's been added to those cells.
Like I said, I have not, Aaron kind of put the bases together and then he included the LCP updates for the grant. I added the other updates. I didn't update everything. I sort of just updated the things like the stuff that's on hold. I didn't bother to necessarily update. I guess I did add the general plan stuff because I already had that, but I think that's something that we can over time, we can decide don't need the, well, I mean, you don't need the updates on the hold, but I guess the way this works is the latest update will stay there until there's a new update, so.
Well, this is fresh. The review is well of that.
Yeah, so it'll, again, getting it set up is different than how it will work over time.
Great start.
Anything else?
Next question on the climate action plan. You said you were putting together a report. What?
Just a background report and probably a resolution for the city council to adopt it.
Oh, I thought there was some investing.
Oh.
Oh, okay, I got it.
All right, moving on, future agenda items, if there's any changes needed there. And turn, thank you all.
Thank you.